Hi everyone, today finally came in the mail. We have the Dynavin N8 Pro for my girlfriend's E46. Going to be installing it today. Just going to go over a couple tools as well as what comes in the box. So, I also bought the relocation bracket here as well. If you do so, there's going to be a couple cords here you're probably not going to need. I don't believe I'll need these two here for the extensions, because it comes with the relocation bracket. Have your GPS antenna. This guy here is for the backup camera. I don't believe I'll be using that, so I can put that back in the box. This one here is for the AM/FM radio antenna, Bluetooth antenna, which you have to put on prior to installing in the dash. I'm not sure what this module here is for, but you have to connect it anyway. This is what attaches to your OE wiring harness, and these guys also attach to the new Dynavin setup. And I'm still not quite sure what this cord's for, but I'll have to figure it out here soon. A couple tools you'll be needing: trim removal tools, Phillips head screwdriver, and a 13mm wrench to remove your negative battery cable. So everyone, this is the car in question. It's a 2005 325. Anyway, first things first, let's disconnect the battery. So the negative terminal, or the battery itself, is in the trunk. Underneath your trunk mat, pull up on the front. You've got two screws. Hope this can focus. Both here and here. Once you twist these two out, you may have to use a screwdriver. Mine, thankfully, it's so loose I can just pry it out with my fingers. Pull out the tray. And down the side here, here's your 13mm bolt. If you so choose, you can also disconnect the negative terminal off the battery itself. This is a 10mm. Once you pull off the 13mm bolt or the 12mm bolt here for the negative terminal, place it off to the side and make sure it does not touch any grounds or any part on the body. So what I've done here is I've just put a cloth underneath, and just make sure to leave your trunk lid open. Sorry, one thing I forgot to mention, prior to disconnecting your battery, one thing that I like to do is put all the windows down, make sure all the doors are unlocked so I have free access in and out. Hopefully you're working in a garage like I am, or possibly outside on a hot sunny day. So anyway, let's start to dismantle the dash. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this trim piece here, and I'm going to do so with my trim removal tool, just kind of prying up along the edge, then slowly working it off slowly. There are little tangs across the top and they can snap, so just take your time with this. In addition, I'll be removing this piece here. Same situation, just go slow, pry it up along the edge. Use different trim removal tools if you need them. And I'm also going to be taking off this A-pillar trim piece here as well. I know a lot of people like to tuck up their wires along the edge here. I prefer to route them straight underneath, because I'm going to be putting the microphone as well as the GPS antenna under the dome light here. So both pieces of the trim here I have removed. I found that this tool seemed to work the best once I got started with this little guy here. So just underneath, just kept prying slowly along the bottom, and then just worked it off from left to right and from right to left from over top of the head unit here. They have these little steel pegs in the back. Hopefully this can focus here. Here we go. And they just push into these plastic grommets here. Past that, to remove the A-pillar trim, you have to take out this piece here. So you slowly got to pry up all the way along the edge. It'll come out with little snaps underneath. And then I believe there are there's a couple, 2 or 3 T20 screws behind here. Once you take those out, this piece should just slide up and back. So here's the trim piece off. You have 3 T20 Torx screws, 1, 2, and 3. And here's the little trim piece that covers those screws. They just have little tangs all along there. So what I did is I started from the top, and from up top here, and I started off with a little pick tool, and then also used a little pocket flathead screwdriver and just slowly work my way along the edge. One thing also to note, if you haven't washed your hands prior to doing this and cleaned off your tools, if you have a lighter cloth interior like this, make sure to wash your hands and clean your tools prior to doing this, because if you don't, you're going to leave grease marks and handprints all up and down this thing, and it'll kind of ruin your day. Anyway, I'm going to take out these 3 screws and pull the trim off. So, A-pillar trim's removed. Hopefully I can route my wiring all through up here and then up and over top to the dome light. I pulled out the dome light. It typically sits in like so. You take a trim removal tool, I pry it on this corner, plop down. You can disconnect it or just let it dangle. Depends if it gets in your way or not. But I'm hopefully going to route the mic to go in the stock location here and put the GPS antenna somewhere behind here. Past that, unfortunately when I took off my A-pillar, starting to get a bit of delamination in a couple spots, so I'm going to have to run over to the parts store and get some glue as well. It might start to wrinkle on the driver's side as well, but I'm not going to touch it until it really needs it. But hopefully I can get this all sorted out too prior to reinstallation. Past that, next step, I'm going to remove my glove box. So it's been a while since I removed the glove box in this vehicle, but you got 3 screws up top. You have 1, 2, 3. There's also 2 hidden screws. One right behind the little strap here, limiting strap, and there's also one on the other side. And then you also have 1 screw in the bottom, down on the bottom here. And once you pull this off, you also have, oh shit, there's also an electrical connection up top here for the little light. I think I'm just going to let this just sit here. I'm not going to disconnect everything so I can work around it. So up behind the dome light, I've got the GPS antenna here, just kind of wedged in between the roof panel and the headliner. And then up behind here, I have the microphone. I just had a little foamy sitting back here. So I pushed both the plugs between, there's a little gap here between the headliner and the roof. So you can kind of pull this down just a little bit, feed the wires through, and then I just ran them and tucked them all along the top, right up and into the headliner. And coming over to where the airbag is, just kind of tucked them right alongside the factory wiring harness. Ran it all the way down the pillar. And then down through the side here. Tucked them right in so they follow all the factory wiring and end up going right beside the airbag wiring and all that. And down underneath. And they all come out here. Nice thing about this little cubby hole back here, I can put on my spare wire and everything like that, just kind of bundle up neatly back in here, as well as a little module that showed you at the beginning. So now the next step's going to be, have to take out the current head unit. So that's going to start off with, I believe it's 1, 2 screws, this pops out, and then you can also take out these 2 guys up top here to remove the center vent. Then you're going to have to come down, pull back out the climate control, unplug that, lay it off to the side, come back down here, pull up this trim section here. There'll be a couple screws underneath here, unscrew those, pop this panel up, and then there'll be a couple more screws under the bottom here for the center trim piece that we're going to be replacing. I'll go through all this step by step. Once the 2 screws are removed, just a little bit of jiggling, you can pull the deck right out. And past that, just unplug it from the back and lay it off to the side. So pull the radio out. This connector back here that connects to the radio is a little bit of a bear. Shoot, trying to find it here. I tucked it in the back already. But anyway, it's a big block here. There's one of 2, at least for mine. So this is all slid all the way down and it needs to come up. So I've got up most of the way, then pried a screwdriver underneath and pushed up the rest of the way and it came out. Past that, from what I understand, this upper vent you need to push back and pull up at the same time off the bottom. I'm having a bit of a struggle with that once I'm to come back to it, but the next thing is the climate control vent. This pulls out just like so. There's 2 little clips up top, so if you just push from the back, push out, it'll come right out, and just need to unplug it. Alright, so after much fussing and fighting with it, I finally got the center vent out. So anyway, I've seen other people's videos where they just literally just pull it out and it's super simple. Well, mine not so much. What I found is you actually have to push down on the top and pull out on the bottom. And you have to do this in a controlled fashion. Unfortunately mine, when I was taking mine apart, there's little plastic wells in the bottom. Anyway, one of mine snapped and I actually pulled this vent portion off. Anyway, I have it back together again, so it's not that big a deal, but in future I'm just going to be really careful if I ever remove this unit again. Past that, I've taken out the climate control vent, or the climate control controls, and I labeled the wiring harness here as a few plugs, just so I can stay organized. I try to label everything so I keep track. Next step, got 2 more Phillips screws in the bottom here and here, and this can take out this little plastic shelf that holds your original climate control and your head unit in place to make room for the new unit. After that, we're going to move on to the shifter. Next up is the shifter boot. So this is where you really want some plastic trim removal tools, and if you do not, take a screwdriver and wrap a ton of electrical tape around the tip of it. What I did is I took this one that looks kind of like a rabbit ears, nice and thin, or your thinnest plastic trim removal tool. Go right on the side here and try to pry up as much as you can. Start up with the first pry and then go underneath it with the second one and worked it around the edge. You also want to have your car in neutral, so even though the car battery's off, you can still flip it over to the on position, shift down to neutral, make sure your e-brake's on so you don't roll away, obviously. And once you get that all pried up around the edge, you can pick it up around. Depending on how you want to do this, you can remove the entire shift knob, and everything else. I'm just going to leave this loose, but if you are going to remove all this, there is an electrical connection underneath here on the left hand side, and there's also another connection here on the right hand side. Sorry, my camera is not focusing. There you go, just under here on the right hand side. But past that, if you're going to do what I do and just leave it in place, you can lift it up and it'll expose 2 Phillips head screwdrivers. Remove those, and you can remove this panel here to gain access to remove the centerpiece here. Once you remove those 2 screws off the little trim panel here, you can pull it up and back. Obviously the car has to be in neutral, or if you have a manual, put it back into like 4th. And now under here you'll expose 2 more Phillips head screws. You have one here, and I've already removed the other down over here. Next, remove those 2. With 2 screws removed in the front here, now you want to remove this, I'm not even sure what you want to call it, sunglass holder. You get it on this prior too as well, just behind here. Just get behind and literally just push it out. Once you pop it and push it out of the way, underneath here you will expose 2 more screws to finally take all this out. One here and one here. Remove these 2 screws and remove this whole center section. After those last 2 screws are removed, you should be able to wiggle and sort of manipulate this around your shifter and trim. I just draped everything with a cloth so don't scratch anything up. If you're really worried about it, you can always disconnect everything and take everything off. You also have to take off the shifter as well. This will obviously be easier for a manual version. Past this, you want to unplug your cigarette lighter and all your row of different amenities that you have here. So once you unplug all this, you should be able to remove this from the vehicle, and then we can transfer all our buttons over to our new unit, as well as our cigarette lighter. Now we have the section of the console removed from the car. Now we can transfer over our buttons, as well as our cigarette lighter, over to our new relocation bracket. So, because I have the single row, I only have 2 T10 Torx screws, one here, one here. I'll pop those out and transfer this over to the new unit. This is something you actually really want to make note of that your vehicle has or has not. If you have the individual buttons, you will need a different relocation bracket. In addition, when you're moving your cigarette lighter, there's 2 tangs on the inside. So if you look down on the sides, there's one here and one down here. You want to depress those tangs with a pick or a pocket screwdriver, and it should just pop straight out. So I've got everything now installed into the new relocation bracket. Seems to be pretty good quality so far. Shoot, I hope my camera can focus. But I did have some issues with the cigarette lighter going into the back of this housing. Unfortunately, on the sides here, these tangs, maybe I'm just not forcing it in far enough, but these tangs are really challenging to engage with a cigarette lighter. Also, the other thing I noticed as well is that there's no provision for the factory LED, which is on the original console, but I guess because there's no ashtray here, I guess you typically don't require it, but it would have been kind of nice if they could have integrated it some way, shape, or form. Anyway, this is all back together, and let's put it back in the car. Back in the car, now you have everything plugged back in, all your OE connections minus the one LED, and you also have the two supplied cables from your relocation kit. These run to the back of your new deck, so you want to route these up into the large hole where your new deck's going to be, from the bottom where your new relocation kit's going to go. Also, take this opportunity to take the wiring down from your AC controls and route them through the bottom and fish them through your new relocation bracket prior to putting in your screws. With the 4 screws reinstalled on your new relocation bracket 1, 2, 3, and 4, now you can go ahead and put your shifter back together. So put your beauty plate back in place, put the 2 other Phillips screws back in, click back down your shifter boot. So now with the shifter back installed and the beauty plate back installed here, now I went and fished the wiring that I had from the GPS as well as the mic just dangling over here in the glove compartment area. I ran it up underneath the dash here and just brought it up and out. So now I'm ready to install the new head unit, as well as I'm going to put in the climate control unit first. Make sure all the wiring and stuff is all neat and tidy and tucked nicely behind, and then put the head unit in and hopefully everything fits nicely. Climate control all plugged in, back and reinstalled. Now it's time to start plugging in the head unit. So first things first, on the back of your head unit, I've already taken the liberty of putting in the Wi-Fi antenna. Everything else here is pretty well plug and play. Everything's keyed, so you shouldn't mess it up too badly. Only one thing to really keep an eye out for is on the back here. I have it upside down, but it's for the media input as well as the phone input here for the USBs. They both are labeled from if you plug them in correctly from down below, so it should be fairly straightforward. You have your GPS antenna, and as well as your Bluetooth mic and everything else. The AM/FM antenna, it plugs into the stock harness, and as well as the harness that you have here that came with your kit. Have to find a place to stash the little box here, but everything else should just plug right in. So now we have the head unit all installed, everything's plugged in. Last thing to do is test it and fire the last couple screws in and finish up. Past that, while you're tucking in your wiring in the back here, if you look over on the right hand side of the screen, there's a little arm there. You want to try to keep any of the little modules and wiring away from that little arm. That's part of your climate control, and you really don't want to get anything tangled up in there. So I try to tuck everything the best I could over to the left hand side. Hopefully this works out. Anyway, gonna hook the power back up and see if everything works. So I've got the first turn on of the unit here inside the car. It seems like it's fairly intuitive for the most part. Setting up the Bluetooth was a bit strange, but anyway, once you get it paired up, it's not too bad. The mic and the Navi antenna seem to work well. One thing I did notice though with the volume of this, like as soon as it goes from like quiet to loud, and there's not much difference until you get kind of further up. But if you go to the radio, for example, like it just gets super loud, and it stays the same volume. Like it's either on or it's off, and like you can put it anywhere here, and it doesn't turn up. Oh, very minimally. But this is the quietest it goes, which it's kind of odd. Anyway, back to the install. So once you got your head unit in place, you know it works. Next thing to put in will be your vents. So you'll slip those back in. There's only 2 screws that are holding this whole thing in, so it's one here and one here. The other 4 that you took out from the previous corners here and here, as well as the bottom 2 corners here and here, they actually threaded into that previous bracket that held the other head unit in place, and the ones on the very bottom here, it's just held in with a couple spring clips, so there's no more screws in the bottom anymore. After you get your vent put back in, the screws put in, then we can go to the trim on around this round here, as well as the one over top of the glove compartment. And once that's all complete, then we can finish wrapping up all the wiring in the glove box area, stashing it down underneath in this little cubby hole here, and reinstalling the glove box. Have everything back reinstalled in the car, have all the trim pieces back in, have the A-pillar trim back in, the delamination issues all taken care of. Just going to boot it up here and show you how fast it turns on. So if you're listening to the radio, it fires on absolutely instantly. If you still have it connected to your Bluetooth, it takes a second to find the phone and obviously get the information, but it's not too bad. With Bluetooth, I'm not sure if you can get like all the album art and stuff like that up on the side here or not, but down here, if you were to plug your phone in, obviously it mirrors everything on your phone right on the screen, which is quite nice. I did solve the volume issue, so you can turn it down and turn up. It was a lot worse the radio before, but how you fix this is you go into the audio menu, go over to the source volume, and you can adjust these bars. So if it's too quiet, you can actually boost it up, and if it's too loud, you can decrease it. Sometimes, especially with the first couple starts, I don't think these settings really took effect right away, so you need to go through it for a couple cycles, and then it will fix itself, and then you can continue playing with it. But don't be impatient like me. Otherwise, I mean, it seems like quite a nice unit. The navigation boots up fairly quickly. The instructions for traveling different places aren't too bad either. But it's set up just like an Android, just about. And everything's quick, there's no lag. Anyway, this will conclude my install. Hope you guys enjoyed. And best of luck with your installations in the future. See you soon.